Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today we're out in my garden. It's a beautiful Saturday. It's mid-April. I'm in Utah, zone 6/7. And since this is Saturday, we're going to have a lot of very happy children noises in the background. They're screaming and having fun and playing, and this is just what these beautiful Saturdays are for. So today is going to be video number 28 on my Beginning Gardener series, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to know when to water your seedlings when it's early spring. Now, as I said, I live in Utah. It's a very dry place. The winter this year has been a little bit different. It's been very, very wet. The soil is quite moist, but I'm still going to need to water some of my seedlings. Now, if you live in Utah, or if you live in areas that use secondary water, you'll know kind of what I mean when I talk about secondary water. But our secondary water is not turned on yet. And when I talk about secondary water, I talk about the irrigation water. Now, our irrigation water, when it's secondary water, is separate from the culinary water. And the city turns the secondary water or the irrigation water on and off when it's time. So April 15th, which is today, is the first day they're supposed to turn it on. But we've been having freezing temperatures still at night, and I really don't want to turn the water on yet. There's no need to. The ground is still wet. I will test my sprinklers at another date. So, since my secondary water is off, I need to have another option for watering my garden. Now, luckily, my house has a hose bib on the outside that's connected to the culinary water, so that is always on. Now, I do use a hose to water, but if it's freezing and the hose is going to freeze and it's not safe to use the culinary water outside because of freezing pipes, what I will do instead is just use buckets or use my watering cans. Now, all my garden beds are planted right now with spring vegetables. So let me show you what they look like, and we'll talk a little bit about how I know when to water and when I should be watering each of these plants. Now, this bed is at the top of my garden. It's west facing, gets full sun, and I have little tiny beets planted in here. A few carrots, some beets, and some peas. Now, it looks like the peas are starting to come up. I had to reseed them. And I have hay over the top. Now, hay is a really, really good way to hold moisture in the soil. When I move back the hay and dig down, it's really quite wet down there. Now, because these are little seedlings, I don't want them to dry out at all. So I'm just going to continuously monitor the moisture. And it's turned out that I've had to water these about 3 times a week, even when it's been cold, just to make sure that they germinate. And then as they start to grow, especially with the hay over the top, I'm going to be able to lengthen out the time between waterings. Now, this side right here is a little bit different. This side right here has seeds that have not sprouted yet. And I'm ending up having to water this area almost every day because, as you can see, the top portion, it's a little bit wet, but it dries out very quickly in the sun. And we want the seeds to not dry out so that they'll sprout. Once they sprout, we can start cutting back a little bit. We'll just watch the soil moisture. And once these are mature, we'll only be watering these about 2 or 3 times a week because we will put the straw mulch over the top and help conserve the moisture. Now, these are seedling transplants that I put in, and I've been able to put the hay over the top because, there's no fear of suffocating them with the hay. If you'll notice, it's really quite moist down there. So this hay has really held the moisture in well. I end up needing to water these only about twice a week right now. When I first put them in, I was watering them daily just to make sure that they took off. Now, if you'd watched my video when I first planted these out, you'll notice that I have red cabbages here. These are new transplants that I had to go buy at the store. The only one that is from seed that I grew is this one right here. I had just planted them out too early. The cold got them. It had gotten into the low 20s. The collards did not mind those temperatures. They did just fine. The spinach survived the low 20s, but the red cabbage did not. So I had to get new transplants for those. And I am watering these new transplants a little more often because they're not quite established yet. The carrots have been in this bed since last fall, and they did absolutely fine. And I think I watered them over the winter probably once a month, and they did really well. Now, these are also plants that I have not watered for quite a while. These were planted last fall. They stayed in my little hoop house all winter long, and they're starting to bolt and go to seed. The cabbage is ready to harvest, and I probably won't need to water these for at least another week. The moisture has gone really deep in the soil, the roots have gone deep, so they don't need to be watered very much. These are my new little onions. They're finally starting to perk up and look like they're going to grow. All the ones that I transplanted did survive, even though we got into the 20s. But these, I'm really careful. If you notice, the soil is quite dry. It's drier than the rest of the plants. I'm not sure why this one is drying out faster than the other beds, but I have been watering this almost daily just to make sure that the roots get settled in. As soon as I see really good growth on these, I will back off, and after a while, I'll probably be watering these twice a week. At the most, maybe 3 times a week. And once they get big enough, we will put the straw over the top to hold in the moisture. This is another bed that I really have not watered yet. This one has been out in the open and uncovered. This is my garlic. And it stayed very, very moist because of the straw mulch. If you dig down, it's nice and wet down there, and they don't need to be watered right now. But I will need to be watering these new little transplants. I decided to put some of my chard out here, and I just put it in the ground, and it's not really happy about it. So we're going to water that and make it look a little bit better. This is another little chard transplant that just got planted, but it's happier with its situation. But we need to water both of these. These are my cauliflower. I did have to replace all the white cauliflower. They did not survive the temperatures in the 20s. But my green and yellow and purple did okay. The purple fared the worst. Now this is also an area where I've been watering it a little bit more often. So far, since I planted these a couple of weeks ago, I've watered them probably every other day, just to make sure that they stay moist enough. They're almost at the point where I can start backing off on the water. These are my cabbages and kohlrabi and tatsoi, and they are doing really well. Stick down and see, and this soil is probably wetter than all of the rest of the soil, so I don't need to water this. So when watering newly planted seedlings, you always need to think about their roots. How deep are their roots? If they're seeds, they're on the surface of the soil and they're not very deep at all, so they need the most water. Newly transplanted seedlings don't have roots very deep, so you're going to need to make sure to keep water on them. Plants that have been in the ground for a while should have roots that are a lot deeper, especially if you don't overwater. If you overwater plants, they will keep their roots shallow. They won't send their roots deeper into the soil to search for water. So you do need to make sure and not overwater them. Some of the things that you can do to help your soil hold water a little bit better is add vermiculite. Every single one of my garden beds that are raised beds has vermiculite added to it so that it'll hold water. Another thing that you can add is compost. Compost helps hold water, but it doesn't hold water as well as peat moss and coconut coir. So it's always good in your raised garden beds to add peat moss and coconut coir. So with the vermiculite, peat moss, coconut coir, that helps your soil hold water a lot better, and you'll have to water a lot less frequently. The other thing is to mulch your garden beds. You can mulch them with grass clippings or straw. I would be really careful of mulching them with hay because hay has weed seeds, but the straw seems to work really well. Mulching them really helps to reduce the amount of watering that you need to do. Another thing you need to be careful of is watching the weather. Now, if it has rained, go out and test your soil. See how deep that rain soaked in. I've had days where it felt like it rained all day, but when I went to look at my garden bed and scratched back the soil, for some reason, the rain did not soak in. So it was only wet on the top ½ inch and it was dry underneath that. So I ended up needing to water. So you have to watch the weather, but then when it does rain, be sure to go out and check your soil. So hopefully this video has been helpful. If it has been helpful, I hope you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.